Hello and welcome to Daily Dose Radio, a 5-minute-a-day podcast studying the Psalms verse by verse, recorded here in the dining room of the Bible Bistro, located in Sharonville, Ohio. Hey there, friend. Welcome back to Daily Dose Radio here in the Bible Bistro. Well, yesterday we finished the first part of Joseph's story here in Psalm 105. And again, just let me remind you, Genesis 37 through 50 is all about Joseph and his time in Egypt. Except for chapter 38, which is Judah's sad tale. But then after 38, we go into 39, and 39 through 50 basically is about Joseph and his life there in Egypt. We find him in Potiphar's house, and then he goes to the jailhouse, and then he goes to the big house. He goes to the palace and becomes second in charge only to Pharaoh. So we're gonna read today verses 21 through 24. Let me read those for us. He made him lord of his house and ruler of all his substance, to bind his princes at his pleasure, and to teach his senators wisdom. Israel also came into Egypt, and Jacob sojourned in the land of Ham. And he increased his people greatly, and made them stronger than their enemies. All right, so 21 through 24 is still Joseph's story. We ended yesterday with the king sent and loosed him, even the ruler of the people let him go free. Then today, 21, he made him lord of his house and ruler of all his substance. Now, who did that? Well, we know it's the king, that is Pharaoh. He is the one who did it, but who moved Pharaoh to do it? The Lord did. The Lord's the one that put the baker and the butler in the prison house. The Lord's the one that caused the butler to remember Joseph. The Lord's the one that gave Pharaoh the dream. The Lord's the one that gave the butler confidence that Joseph could interpret Pharaoh's dream. Yeah, so the Lord's behind all of this because he called for the famine of bread and he sent a man into Egypt. So it's not surprising to us that the Lord's sovereignty and providence is ruling over all these events, which is the theme. It's one of those subtle themes in this particular psalm, because he's there in verse 7, this grand statement of faith in 7. He's the Lord our God. His judgments are in all the earth. So it doesn't matter where his people are. God's going to be watching over them, and he gives them that very promise. He suffered no man. And this is a past example. He suffered no man to do them wrong. He reproved kings for their sake, saying, touch not my anointed, do my prophets no harm. And then he's fulfilling that in Joseph's life because he's going to bring Jacob down into Egypt, which he does here in verse 23. Israel also came into Egypt. So now it's not just Joseph. He's the man that God sent in advance to get things ready. Now the entire people is down there. That entire family goes. And so Israel comes into Egypt, Jacob in the land of Ham. And he increased his people greatly. So God is still working to make his people, a great nation. They're going to be great. They're not there yet in this part of the story, but they're going to be. And he increases his people and made them stronger than their enemies. So, of course, this looks ahead to what's going to happen in the story of Exodus, because in Exodus' story, we have the people increasing. Pharaoh is afraid, and he tells the midwives to cast the male children into the river. Now, we're going to get to that next week, because next week we're going to look at the Exodus in great detail. We begin with Moses there in verse 26. So we're going to have Moses' story. We're going to have the Exodus story itself. The plagues are recounted here. The crossing of the Red Sea, the cloud that by night, the pillar of fire by night and the cloud by day, all of that is recounted. And the provision of water and quail and bread and all of that, and the people coming out with joy. So we're going to see all of that next week. So I hope that you'll join me next week as we conclude or try to piece together now all the parts. We've gone from the patriarchs to Joseph. Now we're going to see next time Moses, the Exodus, and all that God did for the people then. And, of course, the key word in all this is remember. That is our theme. That's our title to this particular psalm, Remember. So join me next week for part 2 of Psalm 105 here on Daily Dose Radio. Thanks for listening to Daily Dose Radio. For more fresh and delicious Bible studies, podcasts, books, and more, check out the Bible Bistro online and on YouTube. Join me again next time for Daily Dose Radio.